So I'm just taking the car out on the stock suspension just to see what it feels like back to back with the MSS. If you watched our early video when we picked the car up, I was complaining that I thought the suspension was far too stiff, especially for UK roads. But as we did more miles on the car, that did soften up and it did become very compliant and comfortable, just like a M5 saloon should be. So, you know, it's a luxury saloon that can do sporty things. And I was never unhappy with the way the car drove or handled. It's got amazing handling right out of the box. But out of all the M5s I've had, it really did sit quite high from stock. So if you look at an E39 M5 or an E60 M5, they don't actually sit that high. But this one was almost like the gap between the top of the tyre and the wheel arch was almost like SUV levels. And from an aesthetic point of view, that's not very nice. So finding a solution that lowers the car but doesn't have any detrimental effect is a priority. We have had the IBAC springs on the car and they did lower the car, but not as much as we liked, and they weren't too bad actually. They were fairly compliant and I didn't notice too much of a loss in the way the car rode. But we're hoping that the MSS suspension is going to be a much better solution. It's not just a single spring. The way the rear suspension works is quite trick. If you want to look at that in more detail, you can check out our RS3 video. We'll put a link up to that there. And we go into more detail about how the MSS suspension actually works. So I'm going to take the car back into the workshop and let the guys fit the MSS, and we'll go out for a drive and I'll remind myself of what that was like, because I did have the suspension on the car while we were doing the development with MSS.
This is a Ryan Little production.
With Aston halfway through the fitting procedure, we can take a look at the springs assembled on the dampers. The fronts are in the traditional format, so you see the spring and then you've got an adjuster like other height adjustable springs have. But the trick with this MSS suspension kit is on the rear, and it's what makes it so different to everything else on the market. If you want more details on how this actually works, watch our RS3 video, which we'll put a link to. But essentially, the spring at the top here is formed of two different spring rates, and then the one at the bottom is a third different spring rate. So the springs are able to handle lots of different types of compressions at the same time, which makes for a really comfortable ride. So we did have the prototype version of this kit on this car for over 6 months. We probably did around 3,000 miles, and even with the car fully lowered, it was still as comfortable, if not more comfortable than stock. And that's what I was really impressed with, and that's why we're actually fitting the kit on our car right now. So we're going to get Aston to fit these back up to the car, take it for a ride, and let you guys know how we feel about it. With the suspension fitted, we can take a closer look at how it looks on the car. We have lowered it maximum front and rear, so it's closed the gap down quite nicely on the front. I apologise for the car being a bit dirty, we literally had no time to wash it. And the back as well, it's a really nice ride height. I think it looks really good. This is pretty much spot on. We'll let it settle and see where we are and then decide whether we need to adjust it up. But last time we had the suspension on the car for development purposes, the back did not rub at all, even when the car was fully loaded with all of Matt's camera equipment and we were doing like 180 miles an hour down the Autobahn. So looks wise, it looks amazing. Let's take it out on the road and see how it drives. With the MSS suspension fitted, it's time to go out and see what it's about. And I will have to say that I did have this suspension on the car for around 6 months during the development process. So we went all the way to Italy to Super Sprint in Mantova, where they developed the exhaust. If you haven't seen that video, we'll put a link up here. So I have done a total of 3,500 miles on the development suspension. Sorry, you get some exhaust noise in there. And I was really impressed with it. It was really comfortable, and I have to say, when they took it back off to make their tweaks and I was back to stock, I did really miss it. It's super comfortable, and the reason for that is because of their unique rear suspension setup. So it has 2 springs, but the longer spring is actually formed of 2 different spring rates, and then it has another spring rate on the second spring. And what that allows the car to do on the rear is it just allows it to handle lots of different types of bumps and compression in one go. So it's much more versatile than using a single spring. So normally when you lower a car like this and you're retaining the dampers, you're normally doing it for aesthetic purposes. And when you use a lowering spring, although it does give you that aesthetic look, which the iBacs did give us, you do lose a little bit of the ride comfort. But with this MSS, there's no compromise. You can lower the car as much as the system allows you to, but it's just as comfortable, if not more comfortable, than stock. And that's a huge feat. They've done a really great job of this. And although this is just a very short test drive to remind myself of what the suspension is like, I did live with it for 6 months and I was really impressed. And when they took it off the car, I did really miss it for the time it wasn't there. And I think that's a sign of a good change that you make to the car, is when you don't have it anymore, you actually start to miss it. It did really make a big difference to the car. So as well as the comfort, with the improved aesthetics, it just feels like the car has much more contact with the road, which just inspires more confidence, especially on these UK B roads, which are quite bumpy. So the suspension has to be compliant. If you have suspension that's too stiff and skittish, you're not going to make good progress. Oh, that exhaust just sounds glorious. Sorry, it's meant to be a suspension video, not exhaust. So yeah, in terms of aesthetic, it delivers. In terms of not being worse than stock, it delivers. And in fact, I would actually say that it rides better than the stock suspension. Let's not get it twisted, the stock suspension is actually very, very good. There's nothing actually wrong with it. It just, I think for me, it just sits a little bit high. And on a sports saloon like this, it does look slightly better when it's lowered. We're also obviously riding on 21-inch wheels now as well, so it means that we've got a lot less profile on the tyre, which would usually make the ride even stiffer. But I mean, 21-inch wheels, we've lowered it as much as we can on the MSS, and it's still super comfortable. I've done massively long journeys in this, as I said, all the way to Italy and back, and it felt just like stock, if not a little bit more comfortable. So it's one of those products you think, why hasn't anybody thought of that before? That's quite a clever, simple thing to do, but they're the first ones I've actually seen do it and market it, and they've got a patent on the way it goes together. So it doesn't fit like a traditional sleeve kit where you have to press it onto the damper. It actually fits into the stock spring location, which makes it easier to install. And I think they're going to do really well with this kit. We've got it on the M5 now. I also have a kit to go on the F80 and the M2, so I'm looking forward to get those on. MSS is not a new company. They have been going for a while, especially in the VAG scene, but now they're branching out to BMW and Mercedes, and I think they're going to do really well with this product. It's really well thought out. So the springs are made by IBAC, so they've gone to the best spring manufacturer in the world to make the springs. The machine parts are machined out of CNC in England, so it's a really high quality kit. It's reasonably priced, and really it's probably one of the best suspension products I've used in a long time, especially with modern cars having electronic dampers, and changing them becomes a bit of a hassle. You have to start deleting the coding. These you use with EDC dampers, you lower them as much as you want, as far as the system allows you to, and you've still got all of the suspension settings, and it works really well. I think they're going to really well with this product. Thank you so much for watching, guys. If you'd like to watch more of this project, you can do so over here. If you'd like to watch what YouTube suggests you might like from our other videos, you can watch that over here. If you like this video, please click on the thumbs up, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to our channel. If you guys have any questions, please drop them in the comment section and we'll do our best to answer them for you.